6 things your team only does with their favorite player. Cold open. A few weeks ago, FIFA fined a national federation roughly $25,000 because their captain wore the wrong armband for about 90 minutes. 25 grand for a piece of fabric on someone's bicep. Well, that was certainly a distraction. But anyway, back to it. Because while everyone was busy arguing about armbands, almost nobody was talking about the much weirder stuff happening underneath them. The actual rituals, hierarchies, and slightly unhinged routines that national teams build around their best player. And once you start looking for it, you do start seeing it everywhere. So here's the central question of this video. Are these rituals genuinely about performance and team cohesion? Or is most of international football just a very expensive, very public superstition with a ball attached? Let's find out. Chapter 1. The Human Shield. Let's start with set pieces, because this is the one that sounds the most made up and is, somehow, completely real. When a team's designated free kick or penalty taker walks up to the ball in a packed stadium with 60,000 people screaming and waving phones behind the goal, there is often one specific teammate whose entire job, for about 4 seconds, is to stand between that player and the crowd. Not to block a wall, to block eye line. This isn't new. Roberto Carlos's Brazil teammates used to do this for him deliberately, positioning themselves so opposing players and goalkeepers couldn't read his run-up or his focus before one of his absurd free kicks. It became so normalized that some teams still assign this job today, quietly, with no fanfare, to a player who will never get credit for it on the stat sheet. So somewhere in a tournament, there's a defender whose entire contribution to a goal was standing very still and slightly to the left. This will be important later, because it turns out a lot of these rituals are about invisible jobs. Chapter 2. The council that would never be allowed elsewhere. Now let's talk about the USMNT, because they did something that, according to at least one Brazilian journalist, would be unthinkable back home. The US ran, and still runs in some form, a rotating leadership council, not just senior players giving pep talks, an actual group at various points including Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, Walker Zimmerman, and Tim Ream, that had input on things like training schedules. Training schedules. The literal logistics of when the team works out, decided in part by the players themselves. When a Brazilian journalist heard about this setup, the reported reaction was essentially a leadership council like that would never be allowed in Brazil, which is a fascinating thing to say about a team that has, historically, had no shortage of leaders, egos, and opinions. So you've got one country where a handful of 20-somethings help plan training, and another where apparently even floating the idea would cause structural damage to the federation. Two very different philosophies. Same sport, same World Cup. Chapter 3. The armband as a loyalty test. 4:15. Here's where it gets a little more calculated. You'd assume the captaincy goes to the best player or the most senior player and stays there. Tournament after tournament. Same person. Same armband. Sometimes that's true, but some national teams deliberately rotate the captaincy match to match, not as a courtesy, but as a test. The idea is simple. Who does the group actually defer to when things go wrong? Not who's the most famous. Who do 11 stressed-out players on a pitch instinctively look at when a decision needs to be made in real time? Rotating the armband lets coaching staff find that out, empirically, across different matches, different pressure levels, different opponents. It's basically a multi-week experiment with a very public, very symbolic prize at the end. And for those of you keeping track, we're going to come back to this whole armband as a tool idea later, because it gets a lot more political than just locker room psychology. Sponsor break, 5:50. Speaking of things that work better when you actually understand the system instead of just guessing, this video is sponsored by Brilliant. Brilliant helps you build real understanding of math, computer science, and data. The kind of understanding where you're not just memorizing formulas. You're working through interactive problems that teach you why something works. I've been going through their courses on probability and modeling, and it's genuinely changed how I think about analyzing patterns, which, as it turns out, is most of what this entire video is built on.